everybody. I am Satyanishka. I'm a nursing student at the University of Sioux Falls, working for my baccalaureate degree. I had partners in helping me out with this project I will be presenting to you. Melissa F. and Stephanie Stiles were essential in collaborating and gathering information as well as putting this project together. And what we were asked to do for our nursing class of cultural holistic care was to make cultural consideration when caring for the Amish. We chose the Amish because they're a very distinct cultural population in the United States of America, and they have a very wide demographic. They're spread out across the country, and they've got some very interesting views, and we feel that nurses should be enlightened about how to take care of this population when it needs actual health care in terms of wellness and um, lack of illness, which is essential for any population. So what we'll do is we'll jump right into it. Um, we used Leininger's transcultural care approach during our research because we felt like it was the best way to take a step back and look at the population themselves, as well as actually using our resources to provide care that has been molded in such a way that it will provide the best um, options for both the population and for the healthcare professionals involved with giving that care. Um, we're thinking that in order to accommodate for the individual's beliefs, you have to really accommodate for the group's beliefs in the Amish culture because community is so important with them. And we'll explore this later in further detail. But for right now, we're just going to say that we're using Leininger's transcultural care. And we'll try to reference this throughout the project just to make sure that you understand where we were coming from and why this continued to make sense to us as we uh, furthered our research. So let's actually start talking about the Amish population. Let's go back to their beginning. Um, the Amish people were separated from the Mennonites in 1693, and they migrated to North America to escape religious persecution, which is interesting to note because we can see that there are various parallels to like Hutterites, Mennonites, and Amish based on dress and garb. We're just focusing particularly on the Amish, though, so some things may differ, some things may be the same if you were to come across either of these groups. There are nearly 300,000 Amish people living in approximately 460 different settlements throughout 30 different states and Canada, with the largest populations, the ones we've all probably heard of, being in Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Indiana. Now, this is important to notice the emphasis on the 460 different settlements. In the fact that they are a religious sect, there are different groups that believe varying different religious traditions, and all of those are different in how much and how hard they enforce those. We'll talk about some of their rules later on, but just understand that when I say something like they don't like to have their photographs taken, some groups are adamant you cannot have your photograph taken. It's against one of the commandments. You shall not have an engraven image. And other groups are just saying, well, you can have your photograph taken, just don't pose for it. And even others will say, well, photographs are okay. I mean, they're going to be taken anyways. There's no preventing that. They're all right. So Amish are traditionally farmers. I think that's what everybody thinks of. Although they can actually take on different jobs. And farming itself, when you're a small-time farmer, even subsidies don't really help you that much. And to get by, Amish have started transitioning slightly over the years from farming, going into factory work, going into managing small business. So there's starting to be a broader change in vocation, although we are still seeing a large majority of them are farmers to support their lifestyle. It's interesting to note that most Amish speak what's various dialect of Dutch called Pennsylvanian Dutch as their first language. So in the home, they'll be speaking Dutch with each other. They use English solely as a second language for talking with the outside world. Um, Various research that I found indicated that if one were to try to initiate a conversation with an Amish person in Dutch, and that person that's initiating the conversation is not Dutch, that is cause for alarm from that Amish person, and that might even be a reason to get upset and frustrated because they like to isolate themselves, they like to separate themselves from the world. And by breaking that language barrier, you may not actually be doing yourself a favor in providing care. However, that does require being able to speak Dutch in the first place, which I don't actually know anybody that can do that. So, for the most part, you'll be pretty safe when it comes to speaking with them. Now, when you say Amish, that's obviously a very, very heavily invested religious program. Um, they are very, very focused on their religion and their spirituality. It's interesting to note these five basic tenets: adult baptism, which we'll get into later; separation of church and state, which obviously helps isolate them further from the world; excommunication for those that break church law. And we'll talk later about a variation of this called shunning, where if someone is viewed or looked upon as doing something that's outside of the church, they can be shunned from the community. Um, Living life in accordance to the teaching of Christ; the refusal to bear arms, which actually exempts Amish from military service; and they also refuse to take oaths or hold public office, which is also very important to note. Um, so, uh, Remember those 460 different groups that I talked about? Well, all of them have an ordnung of some part, which the ordnung in each of those groups is a set of rules and regulations that they all swear that they'll live by. Now, I did talk about a few of them forbidding photography. Um, However, that is subject to change within each different group. Like I said before, some groups are okay with it, some groups are just adamantly against it. The photography thing is interesting to consider from a nursing perspective because oftentimes an admission nurse will have to take a photograph of a person uh, in order to establish identity. And this raises the question, can we actually do that? Well, you will definitely have to ask the person if they're okay with it. And if they don't know, you have to go to the bishop of that group, who is kind of the presiding member. The bishop is something of the community leader as well as the religious leader. And they will be able to tell you definitively, no, this person cannot have their photograph taken, or yes, in this particular case, photography is okay. Moving on from photography, um, we all know the Amish, to a various extent, do not use modern technology or electricity. This is also interesting to note because um, it kind of raises the question: what can we do while providing care? Can we give them a oxygen tank that we think they'll use when they're at home? Well, here's the thing: it's different again based on each group, but most groups are actually okay with using certain amounts of technology. Research that I found said that they can use stuff like batteries. Anything that's run by a battery is okay. Um, some can, excuse me, let me go back on that. Not just any battery, but 12-volt batteries are allowed. Some people are allowed to have 110-volt electricity for special equipment in their home, and that would be like medical equipment, PCA pumps if they're needed. Um, Overall, just from an Amish perspective, home care would be tricky, but there are ways to get around it. There are certain pieces of modern technology that they are allowed to use. Cell phone use is actually um, starting to grow within Amish technology limits because since Amish are starting to manage small business, um, different ordnungs have been regulated and moderated so that they can use their cell phones solely for the means of running a business, which, makes sense and in a capitalistic market is very helpful to the business owners. However, moving on from the